Hello, greeting boxing fans, historians. This is the Historical Boxing Society podcast. This is the boxing profile for the boxer Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. So, Jack Dempsey was one of several early Irishmen to have captured fistic laurels as many of these very early pioneer fighters were of the Irish heritage, meaning they were born in Ireland. And there's a caption that I have here of John L. Sullivan was one of them, Jim Corbett, Jake Kilrain, Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, and of course the great Peter Maher were among the famous sons of Erin, hung up inevitable records. That's the headline of the Irish boxers. So the Irish covers almost all of the early pioneers. You have the two most famous boxers in the beginning of the boxing era, John L. Sullivan and Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. You have all their competitors, most of them there, Jim Corbett, Jake Kilrain, and Peter Maher. So each one of the famous five there are from Ireland, born in Ireland, and are of the Irish boxing descent. Now, we're going to go through here, and I'm going to read you the preliminaries here for boxer number 45, the Irish fighter Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, born December 15th, 1862. Jack debuted in the year 1883 at the age of 20, and he ended in 1895 at the age of 32. 1895 was also his death date, as he died in November, a very sick man from tuberculosis. I made a short there, and I'm going to unload that caption right here, as you're going to be able to see here. And there was a there who claimed that he wanted to do surgery on Nonpareil's nasal passages. Jack Dempsey suffered from an affliction known as catarrh, which was blocked nasal air passages. He had his first fight. They punched him in the nose, and from that point on, he was a mouth breather. And you see in the article here, it claims that he had the disadvantage of what would be like carrying a 25-pound weight on your back, and the fact that he was able to accomplish so much under these severe circumstances was just a testament to his incredible will. And whether he would have got that surgery and lived longer, we do not know. But the doctor that in the article here claims that he's seen all of these problems coming in the future, and he states that he was very correct in that his assumption that these problems did and would occur as he developed tuberculosis from the catarrh issue that he had with the nasal passages. And as I stated in the previous video, during his second fight with George Lablance, he got the nasal bone moved, and it shifted, and I do believe that was the source for him getting sick, as he deteriorated pretty rapidly, just a matter of 4 months after the second LeBlanc fight, when he became very ill. And I will put this caption here. I have a boatload of captions and photographs that I'm going to unload on here. And just in January of 1890 was his first reported sickness. He was on his deathbed. They basically said he is probably never going to fight again. And a matter of a few weeks later, in desperate need of money, he manages to fight again and do a pretty long bout with the likes of Billy McCarthy to raise himself some money due to his medical expenses. So we're going to go through all the footnotes here. The biography for Jack Dempsey. Very few fighters took more advantage of their youth than the great Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. In one of his very first fights here, he debuted in 1883. In 1884, he fought the 32-year-old senior fighter at the age of 20. He fought George James in a 21-round victory. He got himself his very first title. James at that point was the lightweight champion. And Dempsey beat him just 1 year into his debut, and he became champion from that point on. So there's very, very little fighters that captured a championship at the age of 20. So all throughout his 20s, Nonpareil Jack Dempsey is fighting as a champion. He doesn't lose his belt even when he fights LeBlanc. LeBlanc was overweight, so he was still champion. And he eventually loses his belt, the middleweight champion, to Bob Fitzsimmons. So the history books are a little strange there because they declare Nonpareil as the first middleweight champion, even though it was technically the lightweight champion that he won in 1884. But I guess as the weights moved up, they just proclaimed him the middleweight champion. So he is noted as the very first middleweight champion in American history, as far as I can tell. So the biography for Jack Dempsey. Dempsey had very small hands. He was a sleek, fast, small-framed fighter. There was an article that I read that stated Jack Dempsey's wife's gloves fit perfectly on Dempsey's hands. They were, in fact, that slender and small. And as we see here, Dempsey spent his entire life trying to overcome various physical anomalies that he had. Jack suffered from catarrh, the nasal blockage. He was exclusively a mouth breather and could have maybe saved his life with surgery, as I stated, which was recommended by a physician. Jack's first report of the illness came in January of 1890, when it was indicated that he may never fight again. The very next month, desperate for money, he engages one of the most desperate ring battles, a very sick individual, with Billy McCarthy. Dempsey had some of the most courageous will of any fighter throughout the course of history. So much so that it may have actually sped up his death by the abuse he put himself through in the Fitzsimmons bout. At the Fitzsimmons bout, he was indeed a sick fighter at that point. Okay, his fighting style. Dempsey was very much a defensive fighter. In fact, it wasn't until his fight with George Lablance, number 2, that he suffered his very first black eye, according to himself. He often is said to have landed 3 punches for every one from his opponent. That is mentioned in numerous fights that he outpunches his opponents, which is a good way to constantly be ahead on the scorecards by landing 3-to-1 ratio. The competitive rounds for Jack Dempsey, I have at 184 rounds. My score for Jack Dempsey, I have at 9. 9 is one of the lowest scores on here because he had a relatively short career, and he is tied with the Australian boxer Tom Lees and the Australian boxer Bill Lang. The level ups for Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, he was 0 for 1 on level ups. His only level up was Ruby Robert Fitzsimmons, and he lost that 0 for 1. The chief nemesis of Jack Dempsey was, of course, the great George Lablance. I always wished that Lablance would have fought also John L. Sullivan, as Lablance is one of the very oldest fighters that we have in the Master Logbook of Fighters. The only one older than him is Bill Varnon, which was had a very short career and certainly did not place in the top 60 fighters. And also, only Bill Fitzsimmons and George Lablance are fighters that actually place in the top 60 here, as we need to use a little bit different measurement with these pioneer fighters, because the sport was just not quite as developed as it later became, as far as great ring gladiators that they had available to face. The greatest achievement for Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, I would say that his greatest achievement was the gladiator war with John Reagan. 45 rounds of historic fisticuffs in 2 separate locations. As I read in one of the previous videos, they were reported to have to walked several miles to get to the new location. As they were fighting in a ring full of water, and then they had to walk through the snow to get to the other location, and then continue to fight after they had numerous wounds, from the very first few rounds that they had fought. It's quite the ring battle. Certainly one of the most unique ring battles in the entire history of the sport. I don't remember any ring battles where they're fighting in multiple locations. The biggest miss in Jack Dempsey's career, no doubt, I think, is Jack Dempsey would claim his biggest miss is not completing the trilogy with George Lablance, as he desperately wanted the third match with Lablance. As I stated in the other video, he already went to his bar and tried to confront him in person, trying to get a fight, and was unsuccessful in his attempts to secure a third fight. Other misses would be not fighting Joe Choynski. Joe Choynski would have been a great match for Jack Dempsey. They were similar sizes, but I believe that fight never happened because they were, in fact, pretty friendly with each other, and I think that was the reason for them not fighting one another. Okay, so next we're going to look at the simulation results. So my boxing simulation that I use, and these are the results of what Jack Dempsey's true potential would be at his best day, and what he would be capable of accomplishing, or fighters would be capable of beating on his very best day. He has a very close win over the other Irish boxer, Jake Kilrain. He has a draw with Dick O'Brien. He has a third round knockout of Frank Childs. A 15-round win over fireman Jim Flynn. 15-round split decision win over the cruiserweight Colin Bell. KO win in the 8th round over Kid Carter. 15th round win over Mike Donovan Jr. 8th round KO win over George Cole. A 15th round split decision win over Jack Bonner. 15-round win over Mysterious Billy Smith. A 15-round split decision win over Twin Sullivan. 15-round win over Dan Creedon. And incredibly, also a 15-round win over future heavyweight champion Tommy Burns. Now, those are pretty quite accomplishments. I'm not sure Dempsey would have the potential to win all those, but he certainly could have. Some of the deficiencies that Jack Dempsey had was the fact that he wasn't extremely powerful. A lot of his fights were all done under the London prize rules, but all of these simulations are done in Queensberry. But Jack had a great defensive ability. He had a great will, so it's possible that he could have really pushed his limits to the maximum and won some matches that he would not have probably been favored in. But I do believe that variators of all the Pioneer era here have don't quite have as much will as the great Jack Dempsey, as he wanted to win more than just about anyone. And finally, we're going to take a look here at boxers born around Jack Dempsey. So we have the master log here. I'm just going to go through the very beginning because Jack Dempsey is at the very beginning of the master log of birth years here. So we're going to walk our way down to Dempsey and a little bit beyond here. 1851, Bill Varnon. 1853, Old Chocolate George Godfrey. 1856, George Lablance. 1858, Tom Lees. 1858, John L. Sullivan. 1859, Jake Kilrain. Then we have the master class of 1861, Harry Lang, Peter Jackson, Joe Goddard, Pat Killian, and Frank Slavin. Very alone by himself in 1862 is Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. 1863, Patsy Cardiff. 1863, Bob Fitzsimmons. 1864, Joe McAuliffe. And 1865, Denver Ed Smith. And 1866, Jack McAuliffe. So, let's see who Dempsey fought that are around him. He had a match scheduled with Patsy Cardiff, the heavyweight. Cardiff could not come up with the money, and the match never took place. Dempsey also had a match scheduled with John L. Sullivan. That was born right around him. That match also did not take place. He had a sparring session with an exhibition with Jack McAuliffe, and he fought Bob Fitzsimmons. So, and he fought George Lablance. So some of the fighters there he missed, but some of them he fought. He could have had secured a match with Tom Lees. That would have been a fantastic match, as they were similar in size. Tom Lees versus Jack Dempsey would have been a fabulous match. So, okay, now we're going to go into Jack Dempsey's fights, and I have pages and pages of notes here and footnotes, as I'm going to unload the archives of numerous newspaper references and articles here, as I have quite a bit of information on Jack Dempsey. Okay, we're going to go through Jack Dempsey's ring battles. He debuted in 1883 at the age of 20. The very next year, he won his first title against the very elder 32-year-old George James. A 21-round win via TKO. James was, I guess, quite a bit more experienced than Dempsey at that stage, and he was the lightweight champion, and Jack Dempsey won the title from him at the very young age of 20 years old. James was not a very big player in the boxing scene. He was just someone who happened to have the title at that time. And I will show a picture of him now. He looks very much like all of the old-time boxers with classic Jake Kilrain, John L. Sullivan mustache. Seemed to be the norm for many of these fighters of the early pioneer age. His next significant match was in January of 1886 against a 38-year-old, the senior Mike Donovan, the father to the middleweight Mike Donovan. And Mike Donovan was a 38-year-old. Again, this shows as a no contest, but this was a charity bout. I'm not sure why exactly they have the charity bouts as regular matches, but that's what it was. So the first match that we're going to go through here with the boxing notes is George Lablance, number 1, March 1886. 23-year-old Jack Dempsey versus the 29-year-old George Lablance. This was fought on a steam barge, very much like the James Corbett bout with Joe Choynski. This was even before that date by a few years. And we're going to go through the notes here. The greatest middleweight fight on record. It is declared that a better and more manly fought battle was never witnessed before. In the third round, Dempsey proved himself a great technician and a thoroughly game fellow. Lablance fell short and a severe uppercut in his face, which drew the claret from his nose. Rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 were characterized by close fighting. It was impossible to tell just how it would end. The Marine's face was swollen and bleeding copiously. He even spit out a tooth or two, which showed Dempsey's remarkable skill with his left hand. Dempsey's body was badly bruised from the blows of George Lablance. The 9th round, Dempsey hit on a break. Getting a knockdown foul was not allowed. The 11th, Dempsey looked fresher than the Marine. He should very much be fresher. He was a 20-year-old. Dempsey's left looked like a piston rod, doing awful execution on the face of George Lablance. Blood flowed freely from the Marine, who fought back wickedly and gamely, punishing Dempsey more than he was ever punished before in his ring career. Time was called, both fighters looking badly. Dempsey's body was covered with abrasions and his face marked here and there. The 13th, the Marine dashed gamely in at Dempsey, who pitched in new for dear life. The Marine was bleeding like a stuck pig, and Dempsey was puffing and blowing very badly. They never stopped, puffing until the Marine dropped from pure exhaustion. The Marine strove to get on his feet, but could not rise. He was a beaten man. His seconds gave up. The time, 59 minutes of action. A greater stand-up, pluckier, and fairer fight was never witnessed before in this country. The Marine sat in his chair, bleeding, battered, and bruised. And when asked if he hurt, he said frankly, "I am hurt, Dick, badly hurt, but it was a fair deal." Dempsey was asked how he felt and if he was hurt. "Well, I won't say that, but you can bet I was hit hard." So the final results, 13-round TKO win for Jack Dempsey. So immediately after the George Lablance fight here, this is in the year 1886, Jack Dempsey was a rather huge name at this time, and he got greatly offended by some of the comments of John L. Sullivan. And as Sullivan was kind of a boaster, while Jack Dempsey was a very modest man. And there was a few clips here that I'll show you, newspaper clips that Dempsey's getting very annoyed. And they scheduled to meet. The bout was scheduled. Would be in May of 1886. The 23-year-old Jack Dempsey versus the 27-year-old John L. Sullivan. The bout was scheduled. It never took off for whatever reasons. But Jack Dempsey was, in fact, willing to meet John L. Sullivan, and the fight was scheduled. At this point, they were adversaries and not really on friendly terms. They do kind of make up and become friendly after this fact. So the next fight we're going to go to is 23-year-old Jack Dempsey versus 25-year-old Jack Burke. This is in November of 1886, just after the May bout with John L. Sullivan. The Burke-Dempsey bout was very much more interesting and important affair than the Ryan-Sullivan bout. Burke-Dempsey. Both good men, evenly matched. Burke was thought to have the advantage of more scientific fighting. About 100 broke down a large door to get in and see the fight. So in the newspaper column, they described the arena being as full, but there was a crowd outside, and they were so eager to see this fight that about 100 men broke down the large door and got in to see the fight for free as they rushed the stage in pure pandemonium. Burke was the aggressor early, while Dempsey was more careful and cautious. In the sixth round, Burke was fresh, Dempsey a trifle worried and somewhat winded. The 8th round, Burke was forcing the fighting. The 9th round, back and forth close quarter fighting. The 10th round, neither man was hurt and a draw was called. And then here's some notes from a different newspaper. The 3rd round, Burke's eye began to show damage. Dempsey appeared to grow confident, while Burke did not show the same coolness. The 4th round, so far, if any advantage, Dempsey's work appeared to have done more damage. Burke showed slight signs of distress. The 5th round, both fighters were marvelous at dodging blows. The 7th round, both fighters did hot work. The general opinion is if the match would have been a finish fight, Dempsey would prove to be the winner. It was a give-and-take action. The 8th round, both men showed effects of hard work. The 9th round, Dempsey planted his left with terrible force in Burke's face and asked him if he wanted another. He received a worse one a moment later. It became apparent Burke was losing ground, but not so much he could not be knocked out in another round. The 10th, Dempsey stalked Burke around the ring, going for a knockout. Burke saved himself as much as he could by avoiding punishment by keeping out of the way. With a minute left, someone threw a large glass bottle into the ring, with broken glass scattered all over the ring floor. But if its intent was to stop the fight, it failed, as the referee picked up large pieces of glass and the fighters continued. Both fighters wanted to continue and walked to the center of the ring. In the 11th, Burke's seconds stopped him and tore the gloves off his hand. Dempsey had the best of the fight. It was general opinion a few more rounds would have finished Burke. The results were so unsatisfactory that a finish fight may soon be made between them. So, really, the difference between the two newspaper reports are pretty dramatic there. As you can see, one states there was a kind of a no clear winner, while the other one states that Burke was very much on the losing end. So our next bout we're going to take is 24-year-old Jack Dempsey in December of 1887. And this is one of the few matches where he's facing someone younger, and he's facing the 21-year-old John Reagan. The results, 45-round TKO. Now this fight is under London prize rules, as it is not a Queensberry fight. Dempsey very much preferred the London prize ring rules as he started his career as a wrestler, as noted in the previous video. So this is going to be a very drawn out war, as the London prize ring rules is quite a bit different fight, dealing with smaller gloves and fighting and wrestling and such. Reagan's shoes were objected to for its spikes being too near the toe. Dempsey vigorously objected to Reagan's shoes, but the referee decided to allow it. From the onset, Reagan was desperately overmatched. The second round, Dempsey complained Reagan was fouling him by spiking him. The referee cautioned Reagan. A lot of good that did. He was actually kicking him in the shin with the spike shoes, which is ridiculous that a fighter's got to go through this. Just ridiculous. The referee should have never allowed his shoes to begin with. The third round, in a terrible rush, Reagan may have accidentally spiked Dempsey in a terrible manner. The bone could be seen. The cut was so deep on his shin. It's just brutal that he just sliced his leg open with a spiked shoe. The fourth round, the men fought at close quarters. The fifth, with the tide on the rise, and began to creep into the ring as the fighters were forced to move to the dry areas of the ring as water was entering the ring. In the sixth round, the water, which was still encroaching upon the ring, gave both contestants very much trouble. Both were exhausted. Reagan rushed at Dempsey over and over and threw Dempsey at the round's end. In the seventh round, by this time, the water was 2 or 3 inches deep. The men fought harder, trying to end the bout. Dempsey's leg was in terrible condition. He had a handkerchief tied over the wound, which was bleeding profusely, which was causing him severe pain. Dempsey wanted to continue when his friends persuaded him to move the barge. The men went to bed to rest as the barge was filled with water, and a much better ring was found. So it stated there in another article that they walked 20 miles after they moved the barge to get to the new ring. So what happens is they go to bed, they get some rest as they're moving the barge. They enter land, and then they walk 20 miles through the snow to a new ring to fight when Dempsey's leg is split open from this spiked shoe. I mean, the circumstances in this bout are just absolutely amazing. The ninth round, Dempsey went right after Reagan, and it left with frightful force drying blood on Reagan. Dempsey ended the round by throwing Reagan and falling on him as hard as possible. The 12th round, Dempsey was by far the better wrestler. He fell on Reagan with such good use, Reagan grunted with pain. Reagan, however, went on and fought like a true Spartan. The 18th round, blood was flowing freely, and Dempsey has Reagan whipped. The 20th, Dempsey kept up his unholy tattoo on Reagan's ribs. He had bruised Reagan's body until the blood oozing from his ribs made it appear raw. Reagan took a knee several times to extend the bout. All in all, the bout seems to have been a fair one, without any gang work. And finally, the bout ends in the 45th round as Reagan continues to go on after getting mercifully beat over and over again. And very much like a Jake Kilrain and John L. Sullivan. Reagan is taking knees at points, trying to extend the match as far as he can. Finally, in the 45th round, they throw in the title and or throw in the sponge, and that's the end of the bout. And one of the most fearful matches ever fought. I mean, truly one of the most unique fights ever fought. Okay. Let's see here. There's a couple of notes that I wanted to do here on some other Jack Dempsey bouts here. I'm going to go through these real quick here that I found. In 1883, Bakir McDonald, 27 rounds were fought for $100. That was during Dempsey's debut. 1883, Jack Boyan, 23 rounds for $100. 1884, the George Fold James Championship lightweight, 22 rounds were fought. In 1885, John Fogerty, 27 rounds were fought. 1 hour and 51 minutes of fighting for a $6,000 purse. And right around this time, in the 1885, Dempsey is reported to have drove Charley Mitchell out of the country with his offers to fight him for any amount of money, as Charley Mitchell does absolutely everything possible to avoid fighting Jack Dempsey, as he wants absolutely no part of him. They were both middleweights and the same weight, and that would have been a great bout, but Mitchell wanted no part of Jack Dempsey. It's pretty obvious that he was quite a bit afraid of him. Okay, so our next bout we're going to do here is the 25-year-old Jack Dempsey versus a 24-year-old Dominic McCaffery, January 1888. In the third round, Dempsey is quite the aggressor, stalking McCaffery. The fourth round, McCaffery seemed to get nettled by a slippery opponent. Dempsey did all the leading through a large number of his blows were stopped. Dempsey was the better man. Dempsey appeared very fresh. McCaffery took his defeat very sorely. He was in good condition except for his bruised eye and forehead. Dempsey landed 3 punches for every one of McCaffery's punches. So it sounds like Dempsey won the match. There was an article where McCaffery states in the Bob Fitzsimmons book that a very different tale, where he says that Dempsey was just an entire trying to extend the bout and never exerted himself. But it says right here that he had a bruised eye and forehead, so we can't really take McCaffery's own eyewitness accounts as very accurately. Okay, so our next bout, we have November of 1888, is the 25-year-old Jack Dempsey versus the 41-year-old Mike Donovan, as they do a 6-round draw. I assume this was probably for charity too, and these should really be viewed as exhibitions, as a 41-year-old fighter is not really at that early pioneer stage a real fight, but a 6-round draw with the senior Mike Donovan. So Shortly after that is the Choynski and Corbett fight in 1889. And as I stated, Choynski and Dempsey were friends. And Dempsey was in the corner for the Joe Choynski bout with James Corbett. Dempsey was very much interested in Corbett's career after that, as he followed him quite closely. So our next bout is August 1889, George Lablance, number 2, 26-year-old Jack Dempsey versus 32-year-old George Lablance. A 32-round loss. On the undercard of this match was Dempsey's buddy, Joe Choynski, and he fought Billy McCaffery on the undercard, as we soon find out that Dempsey's next match will be against that very same Billy McCaffery. The fight is for $5,500. At this point, it was one of the largest fights, purses up to that date. The loser will get $500. The greatest battle of middleweights ever fought in history. Betting was 100-40 on Jack Dempsey. The second round, Lablance was in such a rush after Dempsey talking smack to him. He rushed him. Dempsey sidestepped, and Lablance looked like a fool as he went through the ropes in his attempt to catch the elusive Jack Dempsey. The third round, Lablance lands a punishing cross-counter blow that shakes up the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. The fourth round, Lablance came up well at round's end after knocking Dempsey against the ropes. Lablance hit after the bell, completely enraging Dempsey, who followed him to his corner and talked smack to George Lablance. The Nonpareil avoided punishment marvelously as the fight continued. The ninth round, Lablance caught Dempsey and threw him, as this match is under London prize rules. So when they throw him, land on him, this is what's going on. So throwing him is not illegal. The 10th round, Dempsey staggered Lablance with a shot on the neck. The 11th round, the round ended with fouls by both parties. Dempsey caught Lablance in the corner and punished him mercifully. The 13th round, Dempsey fought like he was very mad. Some nasty back and forth, and Lablance seemed fresh still. Dempsey's advantage seemed slight at best. The 16th round, the fight seemed even. The Marine was a little short of breath, but they had been fighting an hour long. The 18th round, Dempsey again gained an advantage, but Lablance's win came back again. The 19th saw the first knockdown. One blow caught Dempsey's red ear. Another blow brought blood from Dempsey's nose. Lablance seemed too eager by his success and rushed Dempsey. A straight left on the chin and LeBlanc went full on his back. So LeBlanc suffers the knockdown from being a little bit too eager from drawing blood on Dempsey's nose. The 20th, LeBlanc rushed to gain his advantage again and was punished severely by Dempsey in his effort. The 22nd round this was anyone's fight. Dempsey was getting in 3 blows to every one of LeBlanc's, but the stocky LeBlanc showed little effects from the pounding. LeBlanc had seized his rushes and instead was waiting for openings. The late 20s, Dempsey's blows seemed to lack steam. The 26th, LeBlanc's legs tangle up, and Dempsey hits him several times. He's groggy, the crowd yelled as LeBlanc staggered. LeBlanc lashed out with a blow that sent Dempsey against the ropes. The 27th round, the Marine tried to get at Dempsey's ribs, but Dempsey was far too elusive for the Marine to be able to hit him properly. The men were getting weak. Dempsey realized he couldn't knock him out, so he went exclusively to the body on the Marine's ribs. The 30th round, LeBlanc hit Dempsey with a low blow on the stomach that doubled him over. At round's end, Dempsey caught LeBlanc napping and dazed him. The 32nd round, the last round, Dempsey caught LeBlanc in his corner and landed 3 telling blows. LeBlanc recovered and countered before Dempsey could recover. He spun around in Dempsey's arms. The Marine caught Dempsey on the face as he was staggering. The left caught him with a double force and Dempsey dropped to the floor. Blood was dripping from his nose and mouth. The timekeeper counted to 12 and Dempsey didn't move. He met his Waterloo. A chance blow lost Dempsey the battle at a time when it seemed the Marine was in his power. The visit by Dempsey to LeBlanc's saloon and the refusal of the Marine to make another match has caused much discussion. Dempsey's willing to accept every monetary consideration to get another fight to happen. So, Dempsey's recollection of the bout is very much different from what the newspaper is reporting here, as they state that Dempsey went down and did not move. Dempsey claims that he got up and he was sagging on the ropes when he was counted out, and he was willing to go on as he was able to stand. So I'm not quite sure which of the events is true, as they tell very different tales, but nonetheless, LeBlanc won the match. At this point, it's speculated that Dempsey versus young Mitchell is going to happen, and Dempsey's still referred to as the champion because George Lablance was overweight during the match. And just a matter of a few months later, the LeBlanc happened in August of 1889. In January of 1890, Dempsey's reported as being very ill, and it is speculated that he may never again fight. As I was showed the newspaper clipping for that. February of 1890 is the Billy McCarthy fight. 28 round win via TKO. This is just a matter of maybe 5 to 6 weeks after it's reported that Dempsey may never fight again. Dempsey was low on funds because of hospital bills, because he had won the loser's end of the purse versus the LeBlanc fight. And it only received $500, while LeBlanc received $4,500, quite a big difference. So Dempsey was low on funds and was forced to fight rather sick against Billy McCarthy. He's revered in the newspaper articles as, he's back. The Dempsey's restored as a laurels during this wind. And we're going to examine the fight notes here. Dempsey's face showed the look of anxiety before the match started. His weight was way down. It's reported that he weighed 139 pounds for this bout. The boxing rec weight is off from what I've read. He lost so much weight from the consumption and his illness that he's trying to defend his middleweight title at 139 pounds, even below the 140 mark, which is way off the middleweight limit of what he should be weighing. As you can see, he was very ill. The Aussie, Billy McCarthy, was wonderfully quick, but he was wild. The fifth round, McCarthy performed the whirl that LeBlanc made so fatal for the champion. McCarthy landed on the side of Dempsey's head, but without the staggering ferocity put into it by the Marine. Dempsey laughed and complimented the Australian on his cleverness. At this point now, everyone is trying to do the pivot move that LeBlanc made famous, and they're trying to take out Dempsey with the very move that LeBlanc did. It's rather ridiculous. The sixth round, Dempsey assumed the offense, fiercely rushing McCarthy. A close quarter rally, Dempsey planted a left over the Australian's heart. Later in the fight, McCarthy attempted the pivot punch again and missed as the crowd completely hissed him as these foul tactics continued. The 16th round, Dempsey started fighting fiercely, trying to end the match. He made McCarthy spit blood. To cheer up McCarthy between rounds, they gave him whiskey. The 18th round, the round ended with Dempsey bleeding freely from his nose. The 25th round, the Australian was looking tired, but he was still aggressive. So this fight here is London Prize rules. Also, this is not a Queensberry fight. The 26th round, Dempsey was hitting his man at will. Dempsey grew tired of doing this and asked Billy if he had had enough and if he wants to quit. Billy McCarthy refused. The 27th round, McCarthy could not be braced up enough to get his hands up to defend himself. Finally, a straight left shot sent down McCarthy. The blood flowed in torrents on the ring floor. Dempsey kindly helped him to his feet and asked if he would quit. "I can't, Jack," and Dempsey shoved him down again. McCarthy again rose. He attempted the pivot blow again and fell down from the extraneous effort. The bell saved him. The 28th round, the last round. McCarthy, helpless as a child. Hurry it up, pleaded the victim as he fell to the floor in a heap. McCarthy's blood dripped from his eyes as his head hit with a thud. As to the LeBlanc whirl, I have studied that lick clearly, and the man who attempts it with me is simply wasting his time, described Dempsey after the bout. I practice it with my trainer by the hour. It don't go anymore. The Australian was very badly punished. He barely made it to the dressing room when he became nauseated and threw up blood. McCarthy, in his own words, I do not know what happened. I went queer in the 8th round, and I was stone blind for a few moments. I don't remember the rest of the fight. He could give no account of what had just transpired. A physician was summoned who made the examination of the fighter and prescribed for the fighter whiskey. His trainer poured whiskey over his head, misreading the doctor's orders, and McCarthy shouted in pain as the alcohol got into his cuts. But it did the trick to attempt to revive him. So that is literally one of the most insanely crazy turn of events that I've ever read. His trainer poured whiskey over his head, misreading the doctor's orders, and McCarthy shouted in pain. So obviously he's completely out of it, beat up, badly damaged, no recollection, and the doctor prescribes him whiskey. That's the only thing that can fix him. So at this point there's numerous headlines. Dempsey is, laurels are restored, the king is back, he's back, and he's on top of the world again. The champion has been restored, as Dempsey was a very, very popular fighter at this time. March of 1890. Dempsey will not accept LeBlanc's request. LeBlanc put up his saloon versus Dempsey's $5,000. Dempsey states, LeBlanc's saloon is a resort for San Francisco's worst element, he says. It's not worth $1,000, much less $10,000 for the fight to happen. So we can see there in March of 1890, so this is probably 7 months after the LeBlanc fight, that LeBlanc is already broke. I mean, he had gotten $4,500 in the year 1889 and already went through it. He had no money to even put up the bond to fight Dempsey again, which would have been a huge draw, but he could not come up with the money, as he'd already pissed through all of his money pretty rapidly. So finally, as Dempsey is just a matter of a few more months after March of 1890, he's starting to get benefits for him, as his health was deteriorating all through the year of 1890, as they're doing benefits prior to the Fitzsimmons bout even happening. I think at this point, Dempsey was in such a dire need of money that he was willing to finally, do the Fitzsimmons bout. I think in his heart that he probably knew this was probably his last chance at glory, and he took the bout in 1890 1891 of January against Bob Fitzsimmons. The results were Fitzsimmons loss 13th round. And here are the notes. The stakes are $12,000. The loser gets $1,000, which was double the amount of the LeBlanc loser fight. This is the biggest fight on record, second only to the Kilrain Sullivan fight. 5-ounce gloves were used, and this was done under Queensberry rules. The fight was expected to take in $40,000 in the year 1891. Amazing. That's a huge amount of money. The seating was as such. 240 seats were in the reserved seating for the higher price seats, and 4,250 seats were in the ordinary seating. So total 4,500 seats were in the arena. Every single fighter known to man was at this fight. John L. Sullivan, James Corbett, Jake Kilrain, every single person that was anybody was there at this fight. This was the biggest fight, as they're stating, second only to the Kilrain Sullivan bout. Here are the notes. Dempsey looked like a lightweight next to the rugged, tall Australian. The difference in height was staggering, as the Australian towered over Dempsey, as he looked like a complete lightweight. It seems doubtful that the title can ever be taken from Bob Fitzsimmons, for when he was downed Jack Dempsey, he beat the best man at his weight. Jack took his defeat handily, and he says, "I'm done with it forever," were his words. "I'm done with fighting forever." After the bout. These are the fight details. The first round. Fitzsimmons forced the fighting instantly. A few clinches, Dempsey finally got Fitz in the corner and pounded him with 3 good ones. The second round. Acting on his corner's advice, Fitzsimmons assumed the aggressor. Back and forth round. The third round. Midway through this round, Fitz hit Dempsey with an awful smack in the face and knocked him down. There was loud cheering. Dempsey got up but was very groggy. He avoided Fitz as he was unable to catch him. The fourth round. Both were good-natured, and Fitz began forcing it again. He seemed to hit his man as often as he could, but his blows were not heavy. Dempsey got in 2 good blows at the round's end. The fifth round. In a rush, Dempsey gets off balance and falls. Dempsey is completely out of wind in the fifth round here. As I stated, Dempsey was ill. He probably was not able to train very sufficiently with the tuberculosis, and within the fifth round here, he's already completely gassed. The round was all Fitz. Dempsey got in a hard body shot at the round's close. The sixth round. Dempsey fell again from a trip. Fitz hit him low, and cries of foul could be heard. At round's end, he rushed Dempsey to the ropes and battered away at him. The 7th round, Dempsey showed the effects of the last round. Fitz saw his advantage and rushed in. Fitz fouled Dempsey on a break. It was a foul and it hurt Dempsey very badly. He fell on the ropes and looked as if he was out. He rallied and hit Fitzsimmons on the neck. Fitzsimmons ended the round smiling at Dempsey. So that's pretty unfortunate. This is the 7th round. So not only was Dempsey ill, but then Fitzsimmons hits him on a break with a foul and practically knocks the life out of him. He didn't have enough things going against him. He fouls him, and the foul was allowed. And Dempsey, it really completely stunned him. He, was even more out of it after this. The 8th round, Jack looked very tired as they squared off. Fitzsimmons tried but failed to catch him with the right blow. And it's just showing you how completely elusive that Dempsey was. Even sick with tuberculosis and getting completely stunned from the foul of the previous round, Fitzsimmons still had a hard time catching him. The 9th round, Dempsey was in terrible condition. His left eye looked bad. Fitz never let up. He rushed him all the way through. Dempsey did little more than clinch. On different occasions, Fitz hit him in the stomach. While they were together, cries of foul could be heard from both sides. Fitz drove Dempsey around the ring. He was bleeding from the nose and the mouth and was groggy on his pins. It looked as if he would not last the round, but he did though. The 10th round, Fitz walked over and looked as if he intended to finish his man. Dempsey just wasn't able to reach Fitzsimmons very effectively with any of his punches. A right swing sent Dempsey down finally. He laid there for 6 seconds as Fitzsimmons waited. As Dempsey arose, Fitzsimmons smashed Dempsey on the jaw again, and the round ended. So that was the end of the 10th round. The 11th round, Fitzsimmons came out and asked Dempsey to quit. Jack refused. Fitzsimmons had a chance to pummel Dempsey, but let up, and he tapped him on the ear. Dempsey staggered forward and fell face down. Again, Dempsey rose. As he staggered around, Fitz hit him with a 1-2, and Dempsey fell in his corner. Dempsey got to his feet as Fitzsimmons was walking away and the gong sounded. Fitzsimmons thought the fight had ended as he was walking to his corner, only to find out that Dempsey had gotten up with his back turned to him, and Fitzsimmons could not believe the courage of the man they called the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. In the 12th round, Fitzsimmons was in utter amazement that the fight was continuing. Fitz went in for a knockout. Dempsey was groggy. A slow left landed to Dempsey's jaw, and he falls again. Dempsey rises again as Fitzsimmons had a look of complete shock across his face as he yelled something at the referee to stop the damn fight, as Fitzsimmons turned his anger upon the other man in the ring, the referee. Fitz swung his fist again, and once again, Dempsey instantly floored as he appeared staggering. Dempsey rises once more, and again Fitz sends him down once more. Dempsey was not in it. Jack McAuliffe walked over and convinced Jack to give up. He insisted upon it, and during the argument, the time was called. So, this is unbelievable. So, the lightweight Jack McAuliffe he was seconding Dempsey. He goes actually into the ring during the middle of the round and tries to get Jack to quit. But Dempsey is intent on being knocked out. And amazingly, there's still another round to happen. The 13th round, as Jack Dempsey / Rocky Balboa comes out for more punishment, Fitz' long right lands on Dempsey's ear. As Fitz was just pawing at Dempsey without trying hard, Dempsey staggered around the ring and fell in a heap. He soon rose and made a heroic rally. It was ineffectual, though. This is so much like Rocky Balboa. I'm just no quit whatsoever. Fitz landed a blow on the chin as Dempsey goes spinning. Dempsey was on his feet for 8 seconds had elapsed. Fitzsimmons, standing over him, said, "Quit, Jack. I don't want to hurt you anymore. For God's sakes, just stop." Dempsey replied, "I'm as good as a dozen whipped men yet." But Dempsey was beaten. "Now look out," cried Fitz as he caught Dempsey, who was just below the left ear. He fell to the floor unconscious. 100 men counted the seconds. When 10 seconds was reached, Dempsey was still on his back. Big burly men whose tears buckets had not been brought into play for years were seen wiping moisture from their eyes as they cried in disbelief at the loss of the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. After the match, he had no doubts about this match, owing to the favor in which Slavin spoke about Fitzsimmons. Oh, this is a fighter, Richard Fox. After the match, he had no doubts about this match, owing to the favor in which Slavin spoke about Bob Fitzsimmons, who he considered the greatest man of his age and weight. Jack's father also died of consumption, very much like the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey at the age of 34, and Jack Dempsey is almost 34 himself. So Dempsey claims that the punishment that Fitzsimmons dished out to him was one of the causes that caused him to die much sooner than expected. I guess he had this coming, as he certainly brought all this on himself by refusing to go down, and he claims that it was a Fitzsimmons blow that was causing him to die. Just a matter of a week before he died, he claims that it was the Fitzsimmons blow that was causing him to die. Fitzsimmons hit him in the throat, and he claimed that he could not speak effectively after the throat blow, and he couldn't even communicate very well. And it was a very sad end for the great one, Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. He lived a little bit longer there as he fought the Tommy Ryan in January of 1890. All throughout these times after the Fitzsimmons bout, he's doing exhibitions, trying to earn himself some money to pay for his medical expenses. And the Ryan bout should be viewed as nothing more as an exhibition. And they sadly claim that in the newspaper that they thought Jack Dempsey was in fact drunk when he was just severely sick, because he was in such poor shape during the Tommy Ryan bout that he was flopping around like a drunk person. But in fact, he was just so deathly ill from tuberculosis. I'm sure that Tommy Ryan knew exactly how sick he was, and he was. They were trying to hoodwink the public by trying to convince that the real Dempsey was in the match. And any match that happened after this Fitzsimmons bout should be viewed as nothing more as an exhibition, as they were doing benefits for him constantly, trying to get him to get some money to pay for his medical expenses. And it was a very sad end for the great one, the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. So towards the very end here, Jack states here that he very, very much just wanted to live long enough to see the Bob Fitzsimmons versus Corbett bout. He very, very badly wanted to see it, and he did not make it to the bout. He died just prior to it, and I could imagine that Jack Dempsey's ghost was probably at that event watching it, because he desperately wanted to see how Fitzsimmons, his conqueror, was going to do against the great James Corbett. He did everything in his willpower to try and live long enough to see the match, but he never quite made it there. It was a very quick demise for Jack Dempsey, as he was in very poor shape after the Fitzsimmons bout. And he never made it to see the Fitzsimmons versus Corbett bout. And it was stated when he died that they were going to build him a giant grave, but being that Jack Dempsey, as he always was throughout his career, a very modest person, they said, no, we're just going to settle for a smaller 4-foot grave instead of a giant monument. And even to the very death in his grave site, that Jack Dempsey was modest all the way throughout his career, as it was a rather sad end to the great Jack Dempsey. And I unfortunately never made it to see the Fitzsimmons versus Corbett bout, but Jack Dempsey was one of the great ring gladiators. He had such a will for fighting and such amount of courage that he took during the abuse he took during the Fitzsimmons bout. Fitzsimmons was actually in just utter amazement at the amount of times that he got up. Even when he was walking to his ring corner, he was convinced the bout was over, only to turn around and see the dazed, beaten Jack Dempsey still standing in his corner, as he could not believe his eyes at what was happening. Certainly very few fighters in the entire history of the ring had the willpower and the determination and the courage of the great Nonpareil Jack Dempsey. And that was the story of the great Jack Dempsey. Thanks for listening. Also, it should be noted that the great Manassas mauler Jack Dempsey had such great admiration for the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey that he, in fact, borrowed his name and became Jack Dempsey #2, as they show the photo of the two Dempseys together. And story goes that that's where his name inspiration came from, as he followed in the footsteps of the Nonpareil Jack Dempsey.